Section 10.1 talks about voting methods. In deciding what are the top movies for all time or top players for the Spurs all time, the outcome can be greatly influenced by the voting method used to determine the results. In this section, we'll explore several different methods to determine the top winner. So let's suppose we have a group of sports writers trying to determine the top Spurs player of all time. They're including Tim Duncan, which I'm just going to abbreviate him as TD, George Gervin, GG, Tony Parker, TP, and David Robinson, DR, in their ranking. And below here are their ballots. And these are what we call preference ballots. So if I look at, say, ballot 1 here, it means this particular sports writer said Tim Duncan first, then David Robinson, then George Gervin, and then Tony Parker. Whereas if I look at a different ballot, say number 19, they ranked George Gervin first, then David Robinson, then Tim Duncan, then Tony Parker. And these ballots above are called preference ballots. And you want to notice that many ballots are the same. So for instance, I've looked at ballot number 22, number 23, number 30, and number 36. Notice they rank them are all the same, got the same ranking. They're ranking George Gervin first, Tim Duncan second, David Robinson third, and Tony Parker fourth. We can then organize how often a particular value ballot occurs in a preference table. So there was 20 ballots that ranked the players this way. There was 14 that ranked the players this way. 10 players that ranked it this way, or 10 ballots that ranked them players this way, and 4 ballots that ranked them this way. So with that in mind, let's head to our workbook and take a look at problem number 1. Oh, sorry, wrong section. So let me get to the correct section. So you've got the same ballot, and looking at this ballot, we got them organized in the preference table we just had on the handout. So in the preference table above, how many sports writers voted? Well, we just add these numbers up. 10 plus 14, or sorry, 20 plus 14 plus 10 plus 4. And that will give us 48 sports writers. How many writers selected the players in this order? David Robinson first, George Gervin second, Tim Duncan third, and Tony Parker fourth. Well, that would be 10. And then see how many writers selected George Gervin as their first choice. Well, there's 14 here, and then another 4 here that have George Gervin tops. So that'd be 14 plus 4, which is 18. Alright, so let's go back to our handout. And there are 4 different voting methods that can be used to determine the winner from a preference table. They are the plurality method, the Borda Count method, the plurality with elimination method, and the pairwise comparison method. And as we will see, depending on which method is chosen can alter the results. So we're going to find the winner using the plurality method. The plurality method states that the candidate with the most first place votes is the winner, even that person does not have more than 50% of the first place votes. So with the plurality method, the candidate with the most first place votes is the winner. And with the polarity method, we only need to look at the first row of the preference table to determine the winner. So if I go back to our workbook, so I'm just looking at, for the polarity, I'm just looking at the top row. I've got 20 votes for Tim Duncan. There's 14 plus 4 is 18 votes for George Gervin and 10 votes for David Robinson. Since Tim Duncan has the majority, or I should say has the most, he doesn't have the majority, he has the most votes, then we'd say that Tim Duncan is the winner by the plurality method. Alright, so let's go on to the next method. We're now going to talk about the Borda Count method, which assigns points to each candidate based upon how the voters rank the candidate. The points are then totaled up for each candidate, and the candidate that has the most points is the winner. So each voter ranks the candidates from most favorable to least favorable. For each last place vote, the candidate is given 1 point. Each second to last place vote, the candidate is given 2 points. For each the third to last place vote, the candidate is given 3 points, and so on and so forth. The points are then totaled for each candidate separately. The candidate that has the most points is the winner. With the Borda Count method, we will need to use all the information in the preference table. So let's go back to our workbook. And we're going to turn to page 178. And now we want to find the top Spurs player of all time using the Borda Count method. So remember, for last place you get 1 point. Excuse me. You get 2 points for third choice. You get 3 points for second place, and we'll get 4 points for first place. So here we had 20 votes from Tim Duncan. We're going to times that by 4. That gives us 80 here. George Gervin had 14. We're going to times that by 4. That would be 56. David Robinson, we're going to take 10 times 4. That's 40. And George Gervin, we're going to do 4 times 4. That's 16. Now let's move down to the second row. So we have 20 times 3. That's 60. 14 times 3. And that's 42. 10 times 3 is 30. And 4 times 3 is 12. All right, now go down this column. We got 20 times 2 is 40. 14 times 2 is 28. 10 times 2 is 20. And then 4 times 2 is 8. And then finally, for the last row, we're going to have 20 times 1 is 20. 14 times 1 is 14. 10 times 1 is 10. And 4 times 1 is 4. So now we're going to go and total these up. So first I'm going to look at Tim Duncan. So Tim Duncan, I have 80, 28, 20, and 12. So I'm going to add those numbers up. And if you add those up, that should give you 140. All right, so next I'm going to look at David Robinson. It's got 60, 42, 40, and 8. And if we add those up, that should be 150. Now let's do George Gervin. So we have a 40, 56, 30, and 16. So we're going to go ahead and add those up. And that should give us 142. And then finally, we're going to do Tony Parker. So we have 20, 14, 10, and 4. And that should give us 48. Now looking at this list, David Robinson has the most votes. So by the Borda Count method, David Robinson would be the winner. So let's take a look at the third method, it's plurality with elimination method. If no candidate has majority of first place votes, eliminate the candidate with the fewest first place votes and move each candidate that is below the eliminated candidate up one space or one place. Repeat this process until there's a candidate with a majority of first place votes. This is the plurality with elimination method. And what we do is we keep eliminating candidates with the fewest first place votes until we get a candidate that has a majority. In other words, more than 50% of the votes. Alright, so let's see how that works. So here's my ballot. We know Tim Duncan has 20. George Gervin has 18. David Robinson has 10 first place votes. Tim Parker has none. So we're going to first take out Tony Parker. We're going to eliminate because he has the fewest first place votes. Now, no one really slides up because unfortunately he was ranked 4th in all these. Alright, so now the one with the next fewest first place votes would be David Robinson. So we're going to eliminate him. So I'm going to cross him out. So wherever we see David Robinson, cross him out. And now I'm going to go ahead and rank them. Just kind of sliding everything up. And now Tim Duncan has 20, but George Gervin has 28. So by this method, the plurality with elimination method, that would say George Gervin is the winner. So far we've explored 3 different methods, and each of the 3 methods we had a different winner. That's why it's always important to know the rules. You can ask Hillary Clinton about that from the 2016 election. She got the majority of the popular vote, but that's not how you win a presidential election. You've got to win the Electoral College. Let's go ahead and look at the last method. Is that we want to find the winner using what's called the pairwise comparison method. In the pairwise comparison method, each candidate is compared to one-on-one to each other candidate. The winner in the comparison is given 1 point. In case of a tie, each candidate is given half a point. Once all the comparisons are completed, the candidate with the most points is the winner. Now, to find the number of comparisons needed for n candidates, it's a combination of n candidates taken 2 at a time. So it's going to be nc2, which would be, when you simplify it all, n times n minus 1 over 2. So if we have 4 candidates, we're going to have 4 times 4 minus 1, that's 4 times 3 is 12, divided by 2 is 6. So we're going to need 6 comparisons. So let's just summarize. After all the voters rank all the candidates, a series of comparisons made where each candidate is compared to each other candidates. The preferred candidate in each comparison is given 1 point. In case of a tie, each candidate gets half a point. The candidate with the most points is the winner. So let's go to page 180 in our workbook and take a look at number 5. So we're going to find the top Spurs player of all time using the pairwise comparison method. So first we're going to do Tim Duncan versus George Gervin. And I'm just got to see who's higher in rank. Well, here Tim Duncan's got 20 votes, but in the other spots, George Gervin has 28 votes. So we have 20 to 28. That means George Gervin there is the winner. I'm just going to circle his name for now. And now I'm going to compare Tim Duncan to Tony Parker. In each case, Tim Duncan is ranked higher than Tony Parker. So Tim Duncan has 48. Tony Parker has 0. So Tim Duncan wins that one. And now I'm going to look at Tim Duncan versus David Robinson. So we got 20 for Tim Duncan and another 4 here, that's 24. David Robinson, we have 14 plus 10, that's 24. So this is a tie. Alright, so now I have compared Tim Duncan to the other 3 players. So let's go ahead and continue our comparison. And now I'm going to pick on George Gervin. I've already compared him to Tim Duncan, so I don't have to worry about that. So now I'm looking at George Gervin and Tony Parker. Where George Gervin here is ranked higher than all these for Tony Parker. So he's going to have 48 votes. Tony Parker's going to have 0, so George Gervin's going to be the winner. And then George Gervin versus David Robinson. So it looks like George Gervin's got 18. David Robinson has 30. So David Robinson will be the winner. And finally, I'm going to do Tony Parker versus David Robinson. Tony Parker has 0. David Robinson's going to have 48, so David Robinson will be the winner. Okay, so let's figure out the number of points we'll have. So I'm going to have Tim Duncan, David Robinson, George Gervin, and Tony Parker. So let's go back to the previous page. So on the first one, George Gervin won, so he gets a point for that. Second one, Tim Duncan won, so he gets a point for that. Okay, third one was a tie. Remember, with a tie, we give each person a half a point. So I'm going to give Tim Duncan a half point and David Robinson a half point. Okay, so going up here, George Gervin was the winner, so I'm going to give him a point. Here, David Robinson was the winner, so I'm going to give him a point. And this last one, David Robinson was a winner, so we're going to give him a point. So now what we have to do is we have to go through and we have to add up those points. So if we add them up, Tim Duncan has 1.5 points. David Robinson has 2.5 points. George Gervin has 2 points. And Tony Parker has 0. So just adding up the points, 1.5, 2.5, 2, and 0. Now, these should add up to 6. So half plus half is 1, plus 1 is 2, 4, 6. So they do add up to 6. So by this method, David Robinson would be the winner. So let's just summarize the methods. The plurality method, the candidate with the most first place votes is the winner. The Borda Count method, each voter ranks the candidates from the most favorable to least favorable. For each last place vote, the candidate is given 1 point. For each second to last place vote, the candidate is given 2 points, and so forth. The points are then totaled. For each candidate separate, the winner the candidate that has the most points is the winner. The plurality with elimination method, if no candidate has a majority of first place votes, eliminate the candidate with the fewest first place votes and move each candidate that is below that eliminated candidate up 1 place. Repeat this process until there's a candidate with the majority, in other words, more than 50% of the first place votes. Pairwise comparison method, after the voters rank all the candidates, a series comparison is made where each candidate is compared to each other candidate. The preferred candidate in each comparison is given 1 point. In case of a tie, each candidate gets a half a point. The candidate with the most points is the winner. And those are 4 different voting methods.